want to welcome everybody to the first of many podcasts of the Wyoming Economic Development Association, where we're hoping to bring you monthly conversations with folks around the state who are helping the work that you all do in economic development. And so today we have Baylie Evans from Gener8tor, as the name goes, but to talk, I think, about gBETA, which is one of your programs. And Baylie, just introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about Gener8tor.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, giving me the opportunity to talk about this program that I feel really excited about and love to talk about. So my name is Baylie. I live here in Cheyenne. I've lived here for 15 years or so. My kiddos are locals and I'm almost local, or native, almost native. And I was hired in 2020 to launch the gBETA Wyoming program with Gener8tor. So Gener8tor is our big national company, and we run programs like gBETA Wyoming all across the country. So we've got a gBETA Oklahoma City, and a gBETA Alaska, and a gBETA North Dakota. So we have gBETA Wyoming. We also have gAlpha Wyoming, which I'll get into details of the two later, I'm sure. But so I ran that program myself for the first 2 years of it. We run 2 cohorts each year. Each cohort has 5 companies. And so I ran that program myself for a while, and then I became a manager. So I now manage the people who run the gBETA programs. I manage a handful of them around the country, including in Wyoming. And the way the timing worked out this time is I get to run the gBETA Wyoming Spring 2025 program myself. So I'm looking forward to getting a little back into what I was doing in the beginning with working more directly with founders and helping them, grow and learn and helping them be successful. So.
Does the beta come before the alpha?
The ideal journey here is gAlpha is first.
Okay.
gAlpha is really great for college campuses or students who are, I'm curious about being an entrepreneur, but I don't really know what to do, or I have this cool idea and I don't know what the next step might be. It's really great for helping people decide, are you a small business or are you a startup, based on how we would define startup? And those journeys are somewhat different, actually quite different. So setting up your business the way you want it to be with your end game in mind, that's what gAlpha is great for. And then gBETA is sort of the next step from that, where you've decided, okay, I think the investment venture capital path might be the one that works for me. And so the gBETA program really helps founders, with the math and metrics of what investors want to see. How much growth do you need? How do you get those customers? What are your financing and milestones goals for the next 10 years? Things like that. And then in the gBETA program at the end, we introduce those founders to a whole bunch of investors in one-on-one meetings. So they actually get a chance. We'll help you hone your pitch, your executive summary, which is kind of like the VC's version of a business plan, and then actually give you one-on-one introductions to and meetings with a bunch of investors at the end.
That's really cool. And how long have you been doing this in Wyoming specifically? And do you get those 5 businesses every year?
Yeah, 10 every year, because we work with
that's right.
5 per year per cohort, or 5 per cohort, 2 per year. So the 2020 version that I launched was our first version in Wyoming. So Gener8tor's been doing gBETA and Alpha for, 10 years or so across the country. But 2020 was when we launched it in Wyoming. And that's in partnership with Microsoft. So Microsoft, with their data centers here and their presence in the state, really wanted to be a good neighbor, wanted to help spur innovation and create a healthy economy, or help contribute to a healthy economy. So they approached Gener8tor back in, before I was hired, 2019, 2020, and said, what can we do to do that? And so Gener8tor with Microsoft launched the gBETA Wyoming program in 2020, and we've been going ever since.
That's really cool. What kind of entrepreneurs do you usually typically see in the program?
Yeah, it's a little different every time, I would say. So early on, in the very first couple of programs, we would see entrepreneurs from all different types of companies. So from Main Street bakeries to deep tech patent research coming out of the university. And that's still true. But I think as people have started to learn a little bit more about this program, we've started to see a little bit more of what we would say a venture backable companies are. The ones that do want to grow outside of their community and outside of the state of Wyoming eventually, but remain headquartered here in our state, which is our goal, our directive from Microsoft. So especially for gAlpha, we still get lots of Main Street small business types, and we love that, and we love trying to help them connect to people like you and to SBDC and some of the other groups in the state that can help them. And then also with a founder maybe that says, no, I actually really want to try this like venture backable high growth startup journey. It makes a good pipeline into the gBETA program too.
Okay. Well, let's talk about what you just mentioned for a brief moment, which is the partners that you have in this space. So you mentioned, SBDC, WETA. Thanks for the plug. But how does that partnership work in sort of a big state with not that many people, long roads, but there are multiple organizations that do similar but different things from Gener8tor. How does that work for you all?
It's a big state. It's hard, and it's just me working at Gener8tor in Wyoming right now. So I try to be everywhere all at once, but I can't always be there. For all the terrible things that COVID brought, it did bring Zoom, normalcy. So that helps. I do a lot of the work, and the program itself is on Zoom too. Okay. So that helps. So we can get founders from all over the state to participate. And then, we definitely connect to SBDC, SBA, the university, WETA. We try to refer, and I think it helps that we have a relatively small group, in terms of maybe smaller than it would be in North Dakota or California or something where we kind of all know each other. We help refer to each other a lot, so that helps a lot. That's cool.
So you have an application deadline coming up May 4th, 2025 for this next round. Yep. What types of entrepreneurs are you looking for?
To apply, literally anyone and everyone. Okay. I love to talk to founders with any kind of cool idea for a company that they want to build. So like I said, the ideal stage or scenario for the gBETA program is companies who or founders who have established a company. Maybe they've made a sale or two, maybe they're not quite there yet, but they have an established plan, and they are interested in exploring the investment path to growth. So that's kind of the ideal scenario. But I always tell people, don't self-select out before you even really know what you've got. So go ahead and apply, and let's do an office hour. Let's talk through. Let's do an interview for the program. It has happened a few times where someone says, like, I don't really think this is a thing, but I want to apply anyway, and then they do, and it's a thing. Or we say, here's what you could pivot into and make it a thing if that's what you'd like. I love talking to people who are really deep into their industry and they really know a lot, like say a consultant or an electrician or something that has been doing this for 20 years. And I'll always ask them, what's the thing that you discovered that works really well for you that saves you a whole bunch of time? Like, is it a spreadsheet? Did you build a quick app? What makes you different makes you more efficient in your work? And a lot of times they'll say, oh yeah, I built this cool tool, or I have this app, or I have this thing. I'm like, that's the thing. That's the thing that's growth, beyond your community that you could potentially get investment for and grow. So like all of that to say, basically, I love to talk to anybody about what they hope to build and what they want to bring. And I tell my partners, all the other groups around the state, the same thing. Don't select them out for me. Send them all my way.
Sure.
We'll filter through them. So anyone and everyone.
Yeah, no, it's interesting. You mentioned the idea of these founders, these entrepreneurs who are really good at the thing that they're good at.
Yeah.
But oftentimes they're not business people, right? They made the widget but don't know how to monetize that widget. Yeah. So what do you think are what are the biggest challenges you see these folks face when they come to be part of these programs?
Yeah, well, we talk a lot about this. We talk about traction a lot. Traction being kind of like, how much have you sold? Like, how fast are you moving already? Essentially, think of it like, is your race car on ice or is your race car on dirt? Do you have some good traction? Are you moving forward? But we talk about how you often need money for traction and traction for money, right? So they're in this stuck spot where, how do I get customers if I don't have any money? How do I get money if I don't have any customers? Because investors want to see some customers. So that's the thing that gBETA is really good at helping people kind of figure out, and what is the trigger point for when you need to start raising money or applying for a bank loan or trying to do a crowd fund or something like that, and all those different options.
Interesting. Yeah, no, that is interesting. And I also wonder, it's probably interesting with a lot of these folks because oftentimes, and this is what we've seen with entrepreneurs, is they're balancing the current job that pays the bills,
yes,
and trying to get their new thing off the ground. And I wonder what is that like when you're balancing whether or not they should jump and make the leap full time into this side thing that you see has real potential, versus keeping it as sort of a side hobby?
That's a really good question. And that's another thing that founders struggle with all the time. Our program at gBETA is really meant to be kind of a part-time. Like, you don't need to be full-time on this hustle to be to participate in the gBETA program, but you need to be willing to make that jump at some point, or at least willing to talk about it. And it really depends on the individual's ability to handle the risk of that, right? So individual founder that doesn't have small kids at home and can take that risk without putting their health insurance in risk, things like that are what we talk about. But I think every founder that's done that journey will say, like, hold on to that day job kind of for as long as you can. Or I have one founder that I was just chatting with the other day. He said he made it his goal for a year or something to save up a year's worth of living expenses before he was going to jump into his founder journey full time. So, and it depends on, do you have some family that could support you? Do you not have some family? There's a lot of factors that weigh in there. I wish there was just sort of like here's the moment, now you're ready. It's kind of just depends a lot on a person's individual situation.
No, that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's got to be a challenging one. We talk with a lot of folks who we send your way, or the way of the other organizations that help in this space. And it's one we're not in the seat to push them off that ledge.
Right.
But certainly helping them understand, what could happen if you did jump off.
Yeah. Yeah. Or like, how much money do you think you need to live for a year, while still growing your business? And then that becomes maybe what you look to raise from investment or from loans or from grants or something like that. Before you jump into it, because it's already a risky business. We don't need to risk your family's health. And,
Yeah, you bet. Well, it's funny. Yeah, you mentioned that, because that was going to be my very next question: is how do you help these founders navigate deciding how much they need and what they need it for?
Yeah.
Are they really in the driver's seat in asking for that level of funding from the traditional investor? Or how do you help them navigate those waters?
Yeah, again, it's a really dependent on each individual's circumstance, but one of them is your living expenses, but also you can't expect an investor to pay, for your living expenses. They're paying for your company to grow. So there's some, like I said, I think if you can save up your own, so you can, go to investment and say your investment will be spent on growing this business. I mean, there's a lot of different things to talk about in that. But basically we work backwards, right? So like, how much money do you need for, say, your patent? Because patents can be expensive. How much money do you need for your first 100 products? Say you're manufacturing a product. How much money, like, let's say 2 years from now, how much money are you going to need to create and maintain this business for 2 years? Yeah. And then we work backwards, so if you could get half of that this year, what would that do for you? And it's just kind of a math game. It's a little bit of a crystal ball guessing game.
Sure.
And then we also look at things like the current state of the market. How likely is it that your first-time founder with an idea on a cocktail napkin is going to raise 10 million in 2025? Probably not that high.
Sure.
Let's figure out how we can pare that down a little bit and in Wyoming, maybe in California that might work, but every market, every geography, every type of company is just different. Again, it depends on what type of company is it. Is it software versus manufacturing? So it all plays in, and that's kind of what we do with the gBETA program, is really help figure out what makes sense.
Yeah, no, that's impressive insight. And so then flipping the script on the money giver side, the investor side, what do you see? Is there a trend? Is there any sort of insights that you see for what the investors look for when deciding whether or not that it's a company they want to get involved with? Yeah.
We have kind of this team traction and technology phrase, I guess, team traction tech. So especially in the really early stage, the team is really important. Who are the humans behind this, and what is their background, and do they actually have the experience and expertise to bring this particular idea to life?
Yeah.
So that team part is really important. And in addition to all of those things, is this just a coachable, gritty founder ready to learn and do this? Like, are they really going to throw themselves into it, or are they still maybe a little bit like not quite sure? And you don't have to be ready to give up your life for this, but you do have to be gritty and ready to make some changes. So looking for those types of founders. Team, so that's team. So traction, again, like I said, is just sort of like, what do you have beyond the idea? Do you have a waiting list? Do you have a patent? Do you have a social media following? Doesn't have to be revenue, but if it's revenue, that's great traction. We work with the really early stage, so sometimes revenue is not happening yet. But without revenue, we need, like I said, maybe a letter of intent, a list of customers that say, I will pay for this once it's built. Some way of validating that you have customers, that you've talked to customers. So that would be the traction section. And then technology is this a unique, potentially patentable product or service? Doesn't have to be patented, but investors are looking for things that, this is a jargony term, but has a moat around it, right? So people can't necessarily just come and do this themselves. There's some technology that's protected in some way, or at least that's unique and your own, that you own.
Gotcha. That's cool. So then going back to the middle portion of the traction piece, I went to business school. A lot of folks, would say, well, in business school they teach you got to have this business plan, and it's a document that's going to well outline all of these pieces. How important is that in the actual function of what these?
Let me ask you some questions.
Yeah.
Did you write business plans yourself?
Yeah, of course. You have the traditional pestle analysis, or pistol analysis, and the trajectory that you see yourselves on for a fake company.
Yeah.
Right.
And the purpose of them was go to a bank, get a bank loan,
show it to somebody, and get the money.
Get some money.
Yeah.
So in the VC world, we don't really do business plans. We do executive summaries, which is similar, but it's only 2 pages. And we have a whole template, and really it's meant to be a kind of handout, a pass out. You go to a table, you have a booth somewhere, you have your executive summary. It also really works well for investors or anybody that wants to tell me more about your company, and I'd like to learn more. So we have a 1-page or 2-page front back document that kind of outlines the trailer, the movie trailer of your company. My understanding is that business plans are great for things like bank loans. You're going more the traditional financing path. Maybe you need real estate, maybe you need equipment, things like that. That's typically more what a business plan would be for. And then executive summary is a little more, brief, a little quicker. It's designed to be sort of skimmable. Like I can kind of glance at this and know whether me as an investor, sorry if I hit that microphone, whether me as an investor if this is even in my thesis, if this is in something that I could invest in.
Okay, so then, when talking to the founders themselves, how would you, or do you, help them navigate the difference between whether or not they're more interested in or should be pursuing that traditional loan style versus the VC?
Yeah, totally.
Angel fund?
Good question. So my favorite question or way to suss that out is, what do you plan to do with this company in 10 years?
Okay.
Is this something you want to have your kids and grandkids have someday? This is a legacy type of company. You want to be really focused on your city, your community. You're selling, bakery goods or t-shirts, or this is something that I'm going to hold on to forever and give to my kids one day.
Yeah.
That's a more traditional, I say small business, doesn't have to be small. It can be a large business, but that's more of a traditional path. You want to own this company yourself. The other side of that would be, I have this widget, I have this app, this thing, this trinket, whatever it is, that could be really useful to Microsoft or Apple or some other big company. I'm going to grow it and sell it, and then I'm going to be acquired by this larger company, say 10, 12 years from now. That's the goal. That's a more investment path. Investors don't get paid until you exit your company. So they're looking to invest in you now, a small amount, give you, for easy numbers, I'm going to give you $100 today. 10 years from now, I expect that to be $100,000.
Sure.
They don't get paid until that $100,000 sale happens. So they are going to be pressuring you to sell the company by the end of, its lifetime. It also comes with selling equity, which means you're selling a portion of your company, which means you're selling a portion of control.
Yeah, okay.
So you might end up with a board of directors. You may end up with other people at the table helping to direct the company. If that's not the path, and that's not the path everyone wants, and that's totally fine. Very successful, very wealthy people have been made on both journeys. So, but they are different. And I do try to help founders understand, what does your heart want for this company? Because investors are going to be pushing you to sell it down the road, and you'll have other voices at the table in control. So if that's not the journey that you see for yourself, then there may be other ways to make it happen.
That's interesting. Have you personally, or maybe Gener8tor more globally, seen folks who at one point comes to get help with the resources that you all can provide, who has that first, this is really my legacy piece, who then grows a business to this size and scale where they realize, oh, I think this is massively commerciable, and now I'm going to go this other path.
Yeah, it happens. Hopefully it happens earlier in the journey, mostly just for like paperwork reasons.
Sure.
From what I understand, you can switch from, say, an LLC, which is kind of the small business, traditional business loans version, to a C Corp, which would be more like the investable way to incorporate. And it is possible to switch, but the further along you are in the journey, the harder it is, and the more you have to pay lawyers, and like, it gets complicated. So the earlier, the better. And that's kind of where gAlpha and gBETA can be helpful, is helping people decide which journey they want.
Awesome. No, that's really cool.
Choose your own adventure.
Yeah, that's really cool. So then, say somebody goes through the gBETA program, and now they're a gBETA alum.
Yeah.
What's your involvement at that point once they...
You're asking such good questions.
They do it.
Thank you for letting me tell you all about gBETA.
Yeah.
Yeah, we have lifetime support. So once you're a gBETA alumni, you're always a gBETA alumni, as long as you want to be. So the next step beyond gBETA is our investment accelerator program, which we don't have in Wyoming yet. I'm working on that. I would love to bring one here. Need partners for that, just like anything else. But that would be where Gener8tor becomes an investor in your company. And then we do a similar accelerator as gBETA, but it's 12 weeks, it's full-time, it's more devoted to, for real now, you are on the VC path. You have sold Gener8tor a little bit of equity, and we are helping you raise the rest of that first round. So that would be the investment accelerator path. And gBETA alumni get kind of preferential treatment in the applications of those, into the application for those programs. So like I said, working on bringing one to Wyoming, but they don't, gBETA alumni can go on to participate in investment accelerators in Oklahoma, North Dakota, other places. I try not to tell people to stay in Wyoming, but I also coach them to do what makes most sense for their company.
Yeah.
That's what the founder has to do what's right for them. So anyway, working on bringing that here. I'm working on the next step beyond even the investment accelerator, so that we can actually have some opportunity to invest into these companies.
Sure.
And that's in the works. But even without all of those programs ahead of them, even if they are just a gBETA alumni, they get access to the entire global network of mentors and investors. We do this thing called lightning rounds every quarter or so, which is an opportunity to come in and meet on Zoom, kind of the one-on-one introductions to founders and investors. And we do that where we curate these meetings, usually like all in one day. The idea is the founders can come in and do like 5, 10, 20 meetings all in one day. From investors all around the country.
Wow.
So they get that opportunity. We have conferences. And a lot of times it does happen, especially in gBETA, where they'll finish the program and they'll say, okay, I think I want to raise money, but not yet. I want to get some more traction first and a little bit of revenue first, so that the fundraise is easier down the road. So they may come back to me 6, 12 months and say, okay, now I'm ready. I'm like, great, let's do it. And so I'll help them refine their pitch, help them refine what they need to do, and then introduce them to those investors again, or different investors. So that's
interesting. That's really cool. So then, because they get the lifetime support, do y'all check in with the alumni? Or do they check in with you? Like, both. How does that? Yeah.
One of the best things I try to teach founders in the program is how to keep their people updated. So we do a monthly update. When they're in program, it's actually a weekly update, because I want it to be harder in the program so that it becomes easier when they finish, and then hopefully they continue doing it. But a monthly update, we have a template that we share with the different things you should include. And my hope is that all of the founders that do gBETA will send me, as well as their whole network of people who've asked, I want to know what you're up to, including potential investors, mentors, anybody else, that they send that out every month, hopefully with some degree of consistency. It helps people, put your name on the top of your inbox every month. And anytime, because what happens for me a lot is I'll get investors from outside of Gener8tor or even inside of Gener8tor. I'm looking for a manufacturing in clean tech in Wyoming or in the Mountain West region. Who do you have? And the ones that come to mind are the ones that send those updates. And so we try to get them to update us as regularly as possible. Founders are busy, so they do their best, and some some are better than others at that monthly update.
Yeah.
But when I don't hear from somebody for a while, or when any of us at Gener8tor don't hear from someone for a while, we'll reach out. Sometimes we almost celebrate when it's hard to get a hold of them because we know they're like off doing really cool things and really amazing things, and they don't necessarily need us anymore,
Sure.
which is like, but also like kind of a celebration moment. But also, we keep track. We're very metrics driven at
Okay.
Gener8tor, so we're very results and metrics driven. So we do need updates from our founders to make sure that we're quantifying our work and being able to show, the leverage that we're pulling. So
Sure. How does a founder an investor get in touch with you? How do they know, hey, gBETA's got this group of people that I want to be in the room to see what they have?
yeah,
How do they?
just email me.
Easy.
Yeah.
That's easy.
Yeah. I mean, Gener8tor has a website, of course. And so we have all of our different markets all across the country. And so if there's an investor that's interested in a particular geography, which most of them are, or a particular industry, again, most of them are, we can find programs that fit what they're looking for pretty easily.
Easy. Well, that's cool.
Yeah.
So then, being metrics driven, do you all have an understanding of really the impact that you have then on a local economy, local economic development efforts, or statewide throughout Wyoming? I mean, is that something you all tout?
Yep. Those numbers are on the top of my head.
All
So
right.
we are a statewide program. So all of these numbers are statewide, but our companies have raised almost $20 million, $19.5 million that they've cumulatively raised since becoming a gBETA alumni. So we don't even count if they raised money before they participated in gBETA, that's not counted in this. So after gBETA, they've raised almost $20 million. They've created, what's the latest number? About 140 jobs. So about 140 people work at these. We have 40 alumni right now. And the ratio of the dollars that have come in to pay for this program compared to that $20 million that they've raised is 32-1. So for every dollar that was put in, our founders and our program has created $32.
That's a significant markup.
Yeah.
That's impressive.
Yeah.
Is
they're doing really well.
there anywhere in Wyoming that you're specifically looking to break into? Or
Cheyenne.
Is it really?
No, Cheyenne's actually pretty good. There are the hotspots. I'm sorry, I kind of interrupted your question.
That's perfect.
Is that what you're asking? Okay.
Yeah.
There are a couple of hotspots. Jackson being one. Jackson is one of those places where you can trip over a founder out in the coffee shop, and founders and mentors and investors. So they have an ecosystem that's working, and it's starting to spread throughout the state as well. So that's good to see. Laramie has something of a bit of a hotspot with the university there. I would say Casper. We have a few in the upper northeast side, so like the Gillette area, and then a few in Cheyenne too. But we have 21 communities represented in our 40 alumni.
Wow!
So they're coming from all over.
Yeah. Well, now we know.
Yeah.
Cheyenne.
Yeah.
Bring it.
I need to see more from Cheyenne.
Good. That's good to know. Sure. We do. WETA does a lot of work in the policy space as well, with legislators. And working to make Wyoming, as business friendly as possible.
Yeah.
Do you hear from founders on any sort of policies or things that they find to be particular hurdles, or would you say Wyoming's landscape is as business friendly as the folks here in Cheyenne would lead you to believe it is?
Yeah. Ooh, that's a hard question. I guess I would say I feel like there's mixed answers to that question a little bit. I think the thing that I hear more than anything is I didn't know how involved the government wanted to be in my my business.
Okay.
So you got to file some paperwork and you got to pay your taxes, and how do I do payroll, and like there's a lot of rules and things. So, but I don't think that's unique to Wyoming. I think that's just kind of the story across the country. But then I will hear others saying it was easier than in other places that I've opened businesses. I guess the other thing that's probably maybe not policy exactly, but just sort of Wyoming ecosystem is workforce. That's continually, people are nervous about trying to open a big business and hire a lot of people in Wyoming. So I don't know if that really answered your question.
No, it definitely
what
does.
types of policies do you hear that?
Yeah, no, I think it absolutely resonates, and I'm glad you hit on workforce, because workforce housing has been a big push for WETA, and a lot of organizations around Wyoming.
Yeah.
It's one of those, exactly what you're saying. It would be great to have a business here in the state, but who's going to work in that business and help that business thrive?
Yeah. Luckily, I guess, for like gBETA in our world, we typically work with companies that are very small numbers at the beginning anyway, 1 or 2 founders, co-founders working on something. And then they may hire remotely, they may hire from anywhere, which is different than more of the traditional, like a bakery or a manufacturing facility or something where you actually need human hands there at the place.
Yeah.
So in our sense, it's not as much of a hindrance, I suppose, that workforce. But what does come up, and I'm sure what you have heard, is I want to headquarter my company here, but my spouse doesn't have a job here. My kids, I want to create jobs for my kids here. I want them to be able to stay here. And I don't know what the magic solution is exactly to be able to do that, but it does come up.
Yeah, no, I'm sure it does, and I think it's a really important thing to note, is that you can have the best idea in the world, but there are factors that make Wyoming a tougher place to do that, and make it come to life. And so I think collectively we're all trying to come up with a solution. We haven't found it yet.
Yeah.
But no, so maybe let's jump into some of the, if you can you give us some specifics, some ideas of some of these founders that you've had, some of their businesses, and kind of the breadth of what you get to work with? Because I think that's the coolest piece, is what are these people doing?
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, sure. Where to start? So, let me think here. So Alexis Drake, the handbag company here in Cheyenne, my version is right over there on the table. She goes with me everywhere. She's an alumni of the program. When Lexi came in to do the program, and Lexi, if you're watching, I'm sorry I'm speaking for you, but she said, I just want to learn. I just want to know what the options are. I want to see what this could be. I don't know that venture is exactly what she wants, and that's fine. She came into the program and learned about it, and maybe down the road she'll have a spinoff of her company that is venture backable that she wants to pursue. So that's one option, or one example of a pretty well-known, Lexi's Cheyenne famous for her business here. And she's expanded down into Colorado since coming in through the gBETA program. And she's doing really well. She's hired a bunch of people. Let's see. So there's one called Frog Creek Partners up in Casper. Maybe you've heard of these guys. They're manufacturing these storm drain filters. He describes it kind of like a coffee filter for a storm drain. So you put it into a drain, like in the gutter, and it catches all of the cigarette butts and trash and garbage and pollution. Not all, I don't think, but a good amount of those. And then you just kind of pull it out, put it in a trash, a dump truck essentially, and put in a new one, and it catches a lot of the garbage before it goes into the stormwater or into the rivers and oceans and things. So
that's cool.
That one's cool. That's Brian.
I think
up in
I've
Casper.
seen those.
Yeah, probably. There's a lot around here in Cheyenne,
yeah.
And he's selling them all over the country, really.
Wow.
That one's doing well. Let's see. There's one called Campground Views up in Sundance, and it's essentially kind of like a Google Maps, but for campsites, campgrounds, and specifically for those big rig RVs that sometimes have trouble fitting into the spots. So they may have booked a spot and get there and realize their rig doesn't fit. So he's created this solution that it fits that particular need, but it also just helps people find and book campsites around the country, using some technology that he uses for 3D tours and things like that.
That's really cool.
Yeah, that one's cool too. And then our biggest raise, our company that has raised the most, is called Remo Health. Remo, REMO, up in Jackson. It's a digital dementia care telehealth company. And so helping caregivers of people with dementia connect with their doctors and understand the journey that they're on, and connect with other caregivers and things like that. So
that's really cool.
Yeah, it's a wide variety from handbags to dementia care, but that's that's what we do.
That's really cool. Well, I'm curious. We've talked to a number of entrepreneurs who, because of the resources that are available or maybe aren't available in the state, a really motivated founder will go and try to find as many spots as they can, right? And so what makes why would a founder, I suppose, take gBETA's opportunity first in comparison to maybe some of these other ones? And not to say that they're bad. I just know every one of you does slightly different approaches to how you handle these things. So
there are a lot of front doors into this ecosystem, right? So I feel like there's a lot of opportunity to be referred to different groups and different opportunities. I think the founder really has to decide what journey they want to be on. And I think that first step that we talked about earlier about, is this a legacy company you're building for your grandkids one day, or is this something you want to sell to a much larger company? That's kind of step number one in terms of like which resources should you be reaching out to. So G-alpha, gBETA can help with that decision, but also I'm sure a lot of the other groups can as well. And then G-alpha, gBETA are great for, okay, I think this is the journey that I want to be on, and we'll help you down that path.
That's cool. What do you do when it comes to like resource referrals, right? So you have someone who comes to you and they have this problem, and you go, yeah, clearly that's something that we can help you solve, but it's just we're not, the one solving it.
Yeah.
How do you build that structure into what you all do?
Yeah. So we take applications for our program, and then we accept 5. And so the 5 that we accept, get brought into our program, and we do all the things. The ones that don't get accepted get an email or a phone call that says you weren't accepted to our program, and we always try to provide some reason, some other opportunities for them to consider. So it might just be, we'd like to see a little bit more traction from you. Like if you could grow your customer list by a few more. And a lot of times we'll do this on a call, not on an email, just, just so that we can have a face-to-face. And come back with a little more traction, and your application will be stronger. Or sometimes it might be, you said in your interview that this was more of a legacy company, and I don't think this program is a good use of your time because you're not going to want to sell equity most likely. So here's someone at the SBDC that can help you with market research, and here's some potential bank loan connections or something like that. So it's really, we try to make it a collaborative decision in a way, like it's not just like you just didn't get in because we just don't like you. It's never that. It's just we don't necessarily think that this is the journey that you want, and so we'll help connect to somebody that can help you with that.
Okay. And is sometimes the no for the program that they applied for more of a not today?
Yeah.
Have you had folks come back and get back in a later date?
In fact, a couple of the success stories I just shared were ones that had applied once or a couple of times before they got into the program. Yeah,
and it does make sense when you have 5.
Yeah.
I'm sure in a state that is, what we know is very eager for these types of opportunities.
Yeah.
So that's awesome. What would you say is maybe not the biggest, because I'm sure you see a lot of challenges, but maybe what are the most repetitive things that these folks are looking for or needing help with?
Yeah. Money is the easy answer, right? Everyone always wants, how do I finance this idea, or how do I get some money? And it's not an easy answer. Like I said, it's that you're in that spot between I need traction for money and money for traction. And I feel for those founders that are just like really kind of stuck in that spot. So I would say that's probably the biggest thing we work through, on a pattern recognition type of basis. My advice in that scenario is try to get the money first. Not the investment, the traction first is what I meant to say. So if you can manufacture 10 things and sell those 10 things at cost, just maybe a little bit more than cost, that's traction. You've sold something, that's impressive traction. I think sometimes people skip those baby steps, right? So sell your first small amount, make a little bit of money, a little bit of money, a little bit more, and use that to make a bigger manufacturing run, make a little bit more, make a little bit more. And then eventually you might get to the point where I need to make 1 million of these little wrenches or whatever, these little tools, and I need $3 million to be able to do that. That's when that might make sense for you to go to an investor. You've already gotten some traction. You've proved that people want this thing. What I think happens sometimes is people have an idea for a thing and they think I need immediately investment, and they skip some of those baby steps in between. That wasn't exactly the question you answered.
I think it's very helpful because it provides it really paints the picture that entrepreneurism and making a company that's successful requires so many things. And of course, every company's going to have a different journey of how they get there. You know, some might need this legal help earlier on than later on.
Yeah.
Some might need the venture capital earlier because, you know, it's just them and they can really scale this thing with just them because it's a technology product or whatever. But some might need a workforce before they can get into that space.
Yeah.
And so I would just, I guess, follow up with that question and be curious. You know, we talk a lot about in our organization the resources that our members have. You know, if you need help finding X, Y, or Z in a community, our economic developers are usually so plugged in the community that they're going to quickly know exactly who you need to talk to for any particular situation you might encounter. What type of collaboration do you have in your role with the folks who are other members of WEDA, economic developers, people in that space, and the founders, and how does that function?
I would say mainly in recruitment.
Okay.
So right now I'm recruiting for our next cohort. So I will reach out to, you know, all of the regional directors at the Wyoming Business Council and the, you know, Rachel at the Library to Business, and I'll reach out to the SBDC and the SBA and, you know, the university entrepreneurship services and LCCC and the community colleges around the state, you know, all of them. And just, you know, here's a forwardable email. Will you just shoot this out to everybody you've ever met, essentially? So I'll do a lot of that. And then, you know, they'll do some of that to me as well. Like, we've got this event coming up, we've got these things coming up, and I have a newsletter, and we kind of cross promote in those ways. Yeah, I guess that's kind of the best. I mean, and then when we're in program, so once I've selected the cohort, we do these things called mentor swarms, essentially speed dating for founders with mentors or, you know, economic developers or others that can potentially help them. So let's say I'm working with a founder that needs a physical location somewhere. I might bring in like Wendy, who does recruitment, or, you know, somebody else at the Business Council that can help with site selection, things like that. Or I might bring in a banker who can do real estate loan type stuff. So it kind of depends on the cohort and what they need and what they can get most use from, and I'll try to make those connections.
That makes a lot of sense. What do you, shifting, because we talked now about the founder's problem or challenges, what are some of the challenges that you think Wyoming's economic development landscape faces? Maybe Gener8tor specifically, but also just on a broader scale. We talked about workforce, one thing, but what are the things that you see in your day-to-day that's a challenge at getting this effort lifted up?
Yeah. I mean, again, the easy answer is money. So these programs take money to run. And so, you know, Microsoft has been wonderful and will continue to help fund the program, you know, as far as I know. But, you know, priorities change. And so I would love to have some additional partners that come in and help support the gBETA program and the additional programs I'm working on. Just logistically, the size of Wyoming is challenging, and I think a lot of the best, most successful startup ecosystems in the world are, you know, relatively small geographies with a lot of people, and you just bump into people and you share ideas and you meet at coffee shops, and that has been hard to replicate in a place like Wyoming. There's some ideas floating around. A few of us have been trying to figure out a way to make maybe a hybrid version of those meetups or something might work. And then this is much more kind of macro level, and I don't want to, put my foot in my mouth, but our whole mission at Gener8tor is investing in your own, investing in your own community. So getting in a community to invest in its own people. And surprisingly, that has been somewhat challenging in Wyoming. I think a lot of people really want the options and opportunities to be able to invest in our own. And yet a lot of our retirement accounts and, you know, other are being invested outside of Wyoming. So I realize I'm biased in this conversation, and I am not an economist or a you know, big time investor, but I would love to see some more opportunities for Wyoming people to put their investment dollars here in Wyoming.
Very well said. Yeah,
I hope so.
No, I appreciate you saying that. One more, I think, specific question to you or to Gener8tor, and then we'll sort of wrap this up because I think it's been a really awesome conversation. But my question is that, do you have, and maybe it's going to lead to two questions, so I apologize for saying one, but do you have friendly competition Gener8tor wide to show, hey, here's what Wyoming's doing in comparison to what other states have going on?
Yeah, I don't know if it's exactly competition, but yeah, we lean on each other's best practices and like, here's what works. And the nice thing about working for a national company or, you know, a bigger company, we have 120 people or something, is there is some pattern recognition we can do. So for example, if I need 5 quality, great companies in my cohort, statistically across Gener8tor, how many emails do I need to send? How many office hours do I need to shoot for? How many do I need in my final applicant pool? You know, like there's some pattern recognition. Now it's different and I have to remind them frequently, this is Wyoming. Things are a little different. But there is good motivation to push beyond what maybe we would normally do in Wyoming and not self-defeat in terms of like, well, we just can't do that in Wyoming. You know, leaders at Gener8tor are like, you can, and we're going to do it. Sure. And so we've seen some really good results from like, not leaning on the, well, that can't be done in Wyoming, and like kind of doing it anyway and finding a way. So we're definitely, we pride ourselves on being kind of the shake every bush, turn over every rock. Like I said, I want to talk to founders and entrepreneur curious people of all types. Yeah. I'm not selective about who wants to come and chat with me. Not that I think anybody really is, but part of our, I guess, ethos at Gener8tor is the work is done when the work is done, not when the day is up, essentially, or like, you know, when the deadline hits. Yeah. So I don't know. I think I veered off course of what you were asking.
No, you did, and I think that's helpful to understand that there's this sort of national infrastructure set up within your organization, which then in essence pulls resources from all across the country. Yeah. And maybe the advice that you can help provide to somebody isn't necessarily something that locally you found, but it worked in another space. Yeah, I often will talk about, and it's funny because North Dakota will talk about sometimes what we do here in Wyoming, because that $32 to $1 number is it's good, even nationally across our company. So sometimes they'll ask me like, how did you do that? And I'll ask them because they have a really great pipeline from gBETA into their investment accelerator into their fund, and how did they fund that, and their state contributed, and like there's a lot of different ways that we can share sort of like what's working in different places. Yeah. Tweak it so that it works in our place, our state, and make it happen. That's really cool. That's really cool. That's fun. Well, to wrap up our podcast, we decided on 2 questions that we're just going to ask everybody. Okay. And the first is, very easy, what do you love best about Wyoming? It's not as easy as you think, because I love a lot of things about Wyoming. I just got back I did the Casper, Riverton, Rawlins, Laramie, Cheyenne loop. Yeah. Just last week. And every time I do some kind of road trip in Wyoming, it's like, this is why. This is why, because I just love it. I love getting out where I can see the sky forever. People here are, friendly but gritty and like want to get things done. And I just appreciate that about our state and how there's so much we can do here. We're at this cool place where we can really like choose our own adventure. And I think we're at that point where we can really just like, which direction are we going to go? Sure. I've been talking about which direction are we going to choose for founders, but Wyoming's kind of at a similar inflection point where like, what are we going to do, y'all? And it's been fun to be, I don't know, a part of that and being in the conversations. That's really cool. And then the follow-up question is not as easy, but you said that one wasn't so easy. But if you had all the money in the world, what business would you start? A bookstore. Okay. No, I don't know. I think about that question a lot. Like, I love my job. I love what I do. I think it's really important for our state. The journey of being a high growth startup founder is real hard. It's real hard. And I love helping people figure out how to make it work for them. I'm not sure it's the journey for me, if I'm being fully transparent. I think there is so much, warmth and love that would go into a local bookstore, coffee shop, toy store, something right there on Main Street that
people look forward to visiting. So
That's cool. I'd visit it.
it's probably not the answer I'm supposed to give.
No, it is. There's no right answer.
Yeah.
But that's really cool. Well, Baylie, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
Baylie Evans with Gener8tor. Again, gBETA applications for this next round are due May 4th, 2025. Found on your website.
Yep, on our website.
Which is?
Gener8tor has that 8 in the middle.
All right.
So just Google it. Gener8tor, Wyoming. There's an 8 in the middle of the word.
Perfect.
That's the best way to find us.
That sounds perfect. Well, thanks for joining us for our first of many podcasts, and can't wait to see what you guys do this year.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.